The Soviet Union was established on a commitment to eliminate religion. The state viewed religious institutions as remnants of the old order that had to be physically and ideologically cleared away. The League of Militant Godless spearheaded this effort, spending the 20s and 30s suppressing religious hierarchy and seizing property to cripple the church's institutional presence. This makes the events of September 4, 1943, a significant deviation from party orthodoxy. On that day, Joseph Stalin officially invited church hierarchs to the Kremlin and authorized the formal reinstatement of the Russian Orthodox Church. Photographic evidence from the era captures an unpredictable public alliance. Fully vested Orthodox bishops functioned openly, backed by the authority of an atheist state. Stalin's decision to resurrect the very institution his party was built to destroy forces an examination of the mechanics behind this sudden alliance. A revisionist narrative has emerged to explain this shift, claiming that Stalin remade Orthodox doctrine to create a new, Soviet-friendly Christianity. This theory suggests the state engineered a theological synthesis, bringing the Orthodox Church into philosophical alignment with communist thought. The historical record suggests a far more transactional relationship than this theory allows. Stalin prioritized administrative utility over doctrinal reform, managing the church as a wartime asset to bolster national unity during the invasion. The Marxist-Leninist state used coercive supervision to manage the church, maintaining its underlying commitment to atheism despite the change in policy. The impossibility of a doctrinal merger is rooted in the foundational epistemology of Marxism-Leninism, physicalism. This is the premise that matter exists objectively and precedes mind. In this worldview, consciousness is the activity of a living brain, rather than an immortal substance. This framework leaves no theoretical space for supernatural souls or divine agents. Karl Marx concluded that religion was a historical projection of human suffering, emerging from a world requiring illusions to mask its real conditions. Friedrich Engels expanded on this, describing religion as a fantastic reflection in the mind of external forces that control daily life. Vladimir Lenin made the struggle against religion a central part of party policy, calling it the ABC of all materialism. Because the state's core philosophy was physicalist, a genuine theological merger with orthodoxy remained an impossibility. The real driver of change arrived in 1941. The Great Patriotic War presented an existential threat, forcing the Soviet leadership to reconsider its domestic priorities. To maximize national unity, the leadership temporarily suspended anti-religious propaganda, recognizing that the church could be used to mobilize the population. Stalin recognized that controlled tolerance was currently more useful to the state than total suppression. He authorized the election of a patriarch and the reopening of theological schools, allowing thousands of churches to resume functioning under strict conditions. This shift was formalized by Decree 993, which established the Council for the Affairs of the Russian Orthodox Church. This was a dedicated supervisory body. Its purpose was to monitor church activity, approve leaders, and maintain strict regulation of the institution's limits. Creating a government surveillance apparatus to manage the church during a crisis is an act of tactical utility. The 1943 arrangement required a clear boundary between administration, the church's legal standing, and doctrine, its formal teachings and creeds. The Soviet state dictated the church's legal existence, while leaving its internal teachings untouched. There is no historical evidence that the state attempted to rewrite the Nicene Creed or the ecumenical councils. The doctrinal core remained static. Metropolitan Sergius's 1927 declaration exemplified the church's survival strategy. Known as Sergianism, it involved signaling political loyalty to the atheist state to ensure institutional existence. This also clarifies the role of the Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia, or Rokor. It was a jurisdiction formed by those in exile, shaped by political rupture rather than a unique theology. The restoration of canonical communion between Rokor and the Moscow Patriarchate in 2007 indicates that both branches continued to share the same underlying doctrine. Compromise under totalitarian pressure is distinct from a synthesis of two conflicting worldviews. The limits of the 1943 shift became starkly visible after 1945, once the immediate military crisis had passed. In April 1948, the Central Committee issued a directive to halt the legalization of new religious communities, signaling a return to pre-war tightening. By 1959, Nikita Khrushchev launched a massive anti-religious offensive, attempting to complete the project of secularization. Khrushchev was accelerating a policy of suppression that had already been reinitiated in the late Stalin years. The consequences were tangible. Roughly 12,000 Orthodox churches were forced to close as the state resumed its campaign of physical suppression. The return to a hardline policy after 1945 shows that the 1943 shift was a temporary survival tactic. Viewing the entire timeline from 1917 to 1991 reveals the consistent trajectory of Soviet religious policy. This stood in sharp contrast to Imperial Russia, where the Orthodox Church had been an integral part of the imperial bureaucracy. The timeline shows the reality of the era, a massive block of ideological suppression interrupted only by a brief window of wartime utility. Throughout this period, active participation in religious organizations remained incompatible with membership in the Communist Party. From a Marxist-Leninist standpoint, religion remained an obsolete explanation of nature and society that the state was obligated to eventually overcome. The Moscow Patriarchate survived as a state-managed instrument rather than a converted ideological ally. History shows similar patterns in other states, where reliance on religious institutions as political allies often ends when the immediate geopolitical crisis passes. Stalin utilized the church's administrative structure without attempting a theological overhaul. The 1943 shift demonstrates that a state can tolerate a religious institution for its utility without ever accepting its philosophy.